Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good evening. I know that this is the last session and you are fully with the experience and fully of questions, but this session will deal with the third goal of Sustainable Development Goals, the goal of good health and well-being. The goal definition: ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all people at all ages. This effort must be joint effort between international community, individual government, companies, research centers, civil societies. And according to the philosopher Arthur, health is not everything, but without health, everything is nothing. We are dealing now with professors, the ambassador of Genetic Alliance United Kingdom, Professor Kent Alastair, welcome here. And he was the executive director of Genetic Alliance United Kingdom. This organization is United Kingdom patient organization umbrella body for over 200 patient support organizations for those with rare and genetic disorders. Welcome, and we have to start your speech, please.
And I'd like to thank the organizers for the opportunity, and I'm particularly delighted to be at this point in the in the program for this strand of the BioVision meeting, because over the course of the next couple of days, you're going to hear about some remarkable science, you're going to hear about some really clever interventions that will potentially have a radical impact on the lives of all of us in terms of opportunities to improve our health and well-being. But what I want to do is to conceptualize some of the issues so that innovative science, those exciting interventions, have the best possible opportunity to make a difference to the people who are waiting to benefit from the new knowledge, from the discoveries, from the inventions, from the opportunities that you are going to create as scientists, as clinicians, as professionals, working your way through your careers with the ambition of improving health and well-being. So what I want to do in the next few minutes is to try and bring to you the perspective of the patients and the families, the people who live with the health issues today that we're here together to try and address and to ameliorate. And what you have is a time of unimaginable opportunity. You know, when you think about what's happening in the world today, in the world of biomedical research, in the world of healthcare, in the world of molecular biology, we are developing fantastic insights into the molecular mechanisms of ever-growing number of diseases. We can begin to see at the molecular level how the problems with our biology can be teased out and elucidated in ways that allow for the possibility of a whole range of new disease-modifying therapies. Things like gene therapy, genome editing, stem cells, all these incredible new techniques that are beginning to look feasible and indeed in some cases are coming to bring real benefit to patients and families. And with those techniques come new opportunities. The opportunity to move from the unknown to the known, from the incurable to the treatable, and perhaps to the curable, from the undoable to the goal of bringing hope to patients and families and bringing to them the relief from the burden of incurable diseases. It's possibly the worst thing in the world to find that your child has got an incurable, a lethal disease, and that there is nothing that can be done about it. But with the advances that we have now in our insights into a growing number of these lethal diseases at the molecular level, there are beginning to be signs of hope that what has been, what always has been, need not be in the future if we have the will to achieve change. So that's a time of unimaginable opportunity. But it's not all plain sailing. Research is expensive. We all know this. You know, it is intellectually challenging. It requires complex equipment in specialist facilities and teams of dedicated people. And of course, research in a biomedical arena needs to be properly regulated. But how do we regulate research to make sure that it's done in an appropriate way? When we see molecular biology fragmenting diseases into genomically and genetically distinct subsets, where therapies may be based on targeted genetic changes in a particular small group of patients and what have you, where you can no longer do the traditional large-scale, double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled clinical trial to prove quality, safety, and efficacy. We need to think of new ways of regulating the progress we make so that, you know, as a patient, as a parent, I can have confidence in the interventions, the support that is proposed to provide for me and for my child. And of course, there's huge pressure on providers. Throughout the world, we're facing the challenge of aging populations, of demographic change. We're living longer and suffering more from comorbidities as we get older and less well. Resources are constrained. Our economies struggle to keep up with the demands that are placed on them. And patients and families are no longer happy simply to accept what they're told is good for them. They want pressure. They read, they access the internet. They see that there are new possibilities coming down the track towards them. And they want to be able to benefit from them because they want the opportunity to see the burden of the diseases that affect them and their families lifted in the future. But of course, with that wider awareness comes the risk of exposure to charlatans and witch doctors, people who are peddling nonsense. If you Google stem cell therapies or stem cell clinics, you will see pages and pages of very convincing websites offering stem cell-based cures for pretty much any disease you think you can name, and probably quite a few that you can't. And whereas some of these might be genuine, there's an awful lot of them are just rubbish. They're dangerous. They're peddling, they're trading on the fears of desperate patients and families who will often go to huge sacrifices to go to somewhere which will effectively make their case worse, will harm their child rather than benefiting them. So we need to regulate so that I, as a parent, as a patient, can be confident, can be sure that there is trust in the system and the probity of the regulatory framework will enable me to benefit properly where knowledge is sound. But that, in turn, will impose threats, challenges for our economies and how we meet the responsibility to all our citizens and families. So, as a patient, as a parent, what do I want? I want a seat at the table. You know, the old days when scientists invented, industry developed, doctors prescribed, and I was expected to take it, whether or not it worked, and be grateful, no longer hold water in today's society. We need, as patients, as families, to take part in the process of working out what works, what's important. Too often, developments focus on what can be counted, what can be measured, not what's important. to us. There are some things about diseases that really screw up our lives as patients. There are some things that we can live with. They're a nuisance, but they're not dreadful. If you're going to devote your careers to helping people like me, then I'm sure you want to focus your attentions, your efforts, your creativity on the things that are important, not necessarily the things that are easy. So if we have a seat at the table, we can help you work out what those are and what they can do. We might need help to make our views heard because, I don't necessarily know how scientific research works. I don't know how to express my views, my feelings, my wishes in ways that you can recognize and respond to. So it needs to be a true partnership, not a tokenistic place at the table where you all sit around and you say, we'll have an important professional discussion about what we're going to do, and then you'll turn to me sitting at the end and say, well, this is what we've decided. You do agree with us, don't you? That's not good enough. We want to be there at the table with a voice, with a vote, with a view, and with a value that's recognized. But of course, well-being, and the theme of this strand of the conference is towards good health and well-being. Well-being transcends just medicine. Well-being means that we as patients and families need to be empowered. We need to feel able to take control of our lives to the extent possible, given the limitations that may be imposed by the conditions that affect us and the resources available to us to ameliorate them. We need to be supported to take responsibility for the things we can take responsibility for. We don't need to be told that it's bad for us to smoke 50 cigarettes a day, to eat nothing but saturated fats or whatever. But we need to be helped to take responsibility so that those avoidable harms can be reduced or mitigated. But there are some things that we can do nothing about, no matter how hard we try. No amount of healthy eating will prevent the birth of a child with a genetic disease if both parents are carriers and the 1 in 4 risk is materialized. You can't eat apples to get rid of hemophilia or cystic fibrosis or whatever. So we need help when these things happen to us, because these are not a consequence of things we could have done. And when we do find ourselves in a position as a parent or as a patient with an intractable disease, we need access to trustworthy information that will enable us to take control where we can and where we wish to, where we can make decisions about things that will impact on the quality or the quantity of our lives and the way in which we live our lives. These diseases don't have magic bullets, things that will take them away. So planning a care pathway, planning a regime will have to take account of what's important to me as well as what's doable by you if it's going to work effectively. If you're going to be given the opportunity to make maximum use of your skills and knowledge and experience and expertise, then it has to work in a situation that suits me and my family and the circumstances in which I find myself. And we need confidence that the healthcare system, which is responsible for our healthcare, is there for us, that we won't be dismissed as too expensive, too difficult, too rare, too unimportant, or whatever. So what do we do? What do we need to do to secure good health and well-being? We need solidarity. We need to feel that we are all in it together and that we all have a contribution to make and needs which are important. We need to feel that our expertise, our insights into our diseases, our lives, the way in which it affects our children, our opportunities, are recognized, that we have expertise that we can bring to complement the scientific, the clinical, the technical, the organizational skills that you bring to the table. And we have to hope that others will play their part, that people won't neglect to listen to us because they have that sort of confidence that what they know is right, almost irrespective of the evidence. And we need to have that commitment to public health, to the recognition that managing complex diseases, managing and preventing the occurrence of avoidable harm is a societal priority that should be addressed with the enthusiasm and the relevant resources to bring it about to the best extent that we can. I want to say a few words about rare diseases because although individually rare diseases may only affect small numbers of patients and families, together they're not uncommon. There are something like 8,000 or so different rare diseases that have been identified, and together they affect something like 1 in 17 of the population. Most of them are life-limiting, progressive, and lethal, and 80% of them at least are genetic in origin. So whole families are affected, both across the family and down the generations. And just think about the knowledge that, not only do you perhaps have a child with a life-limiting condition, but you're at risk of having more with the same if nothing can be done. And despite the huge progress we've made in our understanding in recent years, the molecular insights that I spoke about earlier, fewer than 5% of rare diseases have a disease-modifying therapy. And even if there is a therapy, even if there is an intervention that will alter the trajectory of the condition, access to it is by no means universal. So again, imagine you've got a child who's got a rare disease for which there exists a therapy that will maybe slow or stop the progression of that condition. And it's out there, but you can't get it because your healthcare system doesn't feel able to provide it for you for whatever reason. Just think how you feel in that situation. Just think how desperate you would be to be able to do something to help improve the life and circumstances of your child. Things are changing. The International Rare Disease Research Consortium, which is a global consortium of research funders. It was started by the European Commission and the National Institutes of Health in the US, but is now joined by great many numbers of public and private research funders from around the world, has set the goal of a diagnosis for every patient with a rare disease within 12 months of the need becoming apparent, and 1,000 new therapies for currently untreatable diseases by 2027. That's a fantastically ambitious target, and I hope and pray that they will be successful. But just think about the implications of that for the organization of healthcare in your country, in your healthcare system. How would the Egyptian healthcare system cope and be able to make available 1,000 new therapies for patients with different rare diseases that are currently untreatable? What would be the implications for the way in which the service delivery is organized? What are the implications for training the physicians, the nurses, all the other healthcare professionals, the laboratories that will be needed to make the diagnostic decisions, and so on? So again, it's not just about doing the science. It's also about thinking about the downstream delivery of the benefits that accrue from that science. But the challenge is in the promise. Is good health and well-being a human right? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a philosopher. I'm a patient. I'm a dad. But we do need to find a way, a framework for supporting us to take responsibility for the things we can control, whether it's me managing my health and well-being to the best of my ability, or you creating frameworks that make it more likely that I will be able to do this than not. We need to be supported for the things we can't control. There are some things where basically we can do nothing about them. because the science hasn't got there yet, because we haven't got the opportunity to create the insights. And we need to be able to find a way of knowing where are those things that we can do something about, and where are those things that we can as yet do nothing about, and to tease them apart and treat them differently. Because if we can do that, then, as a patient, as a parent, I will feel valued as a human being and a citizen. Notwithstanding the fact that I may be imposing demands on my healthcare system, that I may be unable to work as fully or as extensively as I would wish to, that I might make a lesser contribution to the overall societal goals that we might aspire to, because my health, my well-being has been compromised by something that is beyond my control. But it is also a time of hope, great hope. Only this week, the first trial of a genome editing process, clinical trial for a genome editing program to address the problems of children with beta thalassemia was launched. Just think, if we can turn beta thalassemia, or a child with beta thalassemia, into a child who no longer has beta thalassemia because of genome editing, just think what that would mean in this part of the world particularly. Just think about the resources that would liberate in our healthcare systems to do other things for good. Just think about the impact on the lives of those who would benefit from it. At the moment, in the UK, gene transfer for babies born without an immune system because of severe combined immune deficiency is a curative process. It only can be used on about a dozen children a year, but these children become normal children. They no longer have SCIDs. They no longer have severe combined immune deficiency. They no longer live in sterile bubbles and die quickly from every passing bug. They go out and they play. They go to school. They're growing up. The oldest child who's been treated is about 15, and they're normal. They're just children. They're teenagers. They have all the issues that teenagers have. Also this week, in the UK, a decision was made to license a particular clinic to deliver in utero surgery for babies with spina bifida. It won't cure, but it will give these children, if it's successful, a hugely improved quality of life. And again in Europe, there was an announcement of 1 million genomes to be shared across to build that critical mass for research. So, the opportunity is there, but it's also the challenge. How do we realize this potential? How do we make a healthcare system that's there for all of us, not just for the wealthy? And how do we focus on what works? Resisting the inertia of our healthcare system to do what it's always done, because that's what it's always done. It's changing the direction of the supertanker to take account of new knowledge and new opportunities. So it is a time of optimism. Yes, it really is a time of optimism. One of my favorite quotes is that from Barack Obama. Yes, we can. Because I don't believe that no problem is beyond the wit of human ingenuity. The intellect gathered here in this room, if put to creative purpose properly, is sufficient, I'm sure, to address many of the problems that we face effectively. So I would hope that at the end of this conference, you will go out there and go back to your courses, your jobs, your research institutes, your clinics, fired with the belief that, yes, we can. The problem is there to be solved, and we can do it. So, if you have been, thank you for listening.
And now will join us Professor Anestidou, Lida. She is the Senior Program Officer, Division on Earth and Life Studies, U.S. National Academy of Science, USA. She has led the Educational Institutes on Responsible Science, a diverse portfolio of international multi-million-dollar programs on responsible conduct of research and education in the Middle East, North Africa, and Southeast Asia. Before joining the National Academies, Dr. Anestidou was a faculty member of the Center for Biomedical Ethics and Society, Vanderbilt University Medical Center, Tennessee.
Thank you very much to the organizers for having me here. For me, it's particularly important that I speak in the walls of the library, since the library hails from the antiquities, and I come from Greece, so it's a very important institution in our history, just as it is in the Egyptian history as well. So thank you very much. I will be speaking about a program where I work at the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, together with the Pakistan Academy of Sciences. We have put together, it's a fellowship program on One Health. And so I will first explain a little bit the concept of One Health and why it is important and why we seek to address it with this fellowship program. And then I will spend a few minutes, approximately half of my talk, describing the program to you and some of the lessons we have learned as we go through it. So this is a slide from an article published in The Lancet in 2012. It is a slide that reveals the global aviation network in that time of publication. The reddest parts of those networks signify places, airports, where many, many thousands of passengers transit through a day. And so this is a time where global transit in a day means that together with humans, pathogens also reach new places, often when the human carriers or the animal carriers are not perhaps showing signs of disease, yet they may be shedding the pathogen or the viruses. So that is why the title of a slide is The Interconnected World. A problem somewhere is a problem everywhere. So within this context, the Centers for Disease Control in the United States have defined One Health as a concept that recognizes that the health of humans depends very much on the health of animals and of the environment. It is very much connected to those. Therefore, any threats at the cross-section of humans, animals, and the environment affect all of us, in addition to affecting the other two pieces of the tripartite complex. So, for example, zoonoses, diseases that originate in animals and affect humans, at the moment comprise more than 60% of known pathogens. Yet, even with this body of knowledge, there is an effort that is trying to be initiated, which is called the Global Veeram Project, which claims and wants to investigate and create an atlas of all the viruses that exist on this planet. And according to the people who have thought about this project, most of the viruses today remain unknown. But it's not, the threats are not only from diseases, they are from, for example, food and water safety and security and access to clean and unpolluted water, unpolluted soil, unpolluted places to live. And all of these, as others have said in the previous talks that we heard, a lot of these things are precipitated by changes in the way we use land. Deforestation, for example, is a big driver in changes between the equilibrium that we have come to know, but we no longer should be expecting. Climate change, human and animal migration, and of course, the very increasing human population, projected to be 9 billion by 2050. I would imagine that most of you, if not all of you, have seen pictures like this, selling live animals on the picture to my left, very, very close proximity to each other, very close proximity to humans who sell them. On the right, heavy farming of broiler chickens or lay hens, any kind of intense farming situations where animals live in close encounters. In these situations, as you all know, and because we have increasing demand for animal protein for humans to consume, antibiotics are used very heavily. And therefore, we have another very big problem, which is called antimicrobial resistance. In an article in 2015, Thomas Buchel and his colleagues have used mathematical modeling to estimate that by 2030, the use of antibiotics to increase food production will be increased globally by about 67%. And in the BRIC countries alone, that is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and in South Africa, it will double. And the reason that this is happening is that there is the growing demand for protein, as I mentioned, and in order to meet this demand, there is a move away from the expansive farming systems to intensive, large-scale farming, such as the one we see on the right. So we transport animals in any kind of methods, ways, shapes, and forms, legally or illegally, appropriately or not appropriately, and as animals are transported, so are their microbes, and so are their viruses. And as they are traded, so are the microbes and the viruses and the parasites. On the left, the bottom, you can see a picture of a slaughterhouse in Cambodia. This kind of slaughterhouse still exists in many parts of the world. It's the ideal breeding ground for transmissions of any number of terrible diseases from animals to humans. So in order for us to be able to make an intelligent contribution to ameliorate some of these elements, to improve how we understand and how we combat diseases so that well-being for humans and for animals and for the environment is supported, I won't go into this here. I want to focus on this one. We do need to build capacity. We do need to educate our scientists. We need to have young people going to different professions, become proficient in veterinary medicine, in public health, in epidemiology, become physicians, medical doctors, being able to work on all these different elements that together try to safeguard the health of the humans, the health of the environment, and the health of the animals. These two, both on the right and on the left, come from a very recent report by the World Bank, which is called Operational Framework for Strengthening Human, Animal, and Environmental Public Health Systems at their interface, where they grow together, where a Venn diagram comes together. And on the right is an explanation why different disciplines have to stop working in silos and they have to work together to be able to improve our capacity to be better stewards of disease burden in the world. On the upper part of the slide on the right, you can perhaps infer that diseases from wildlife on the left are not only affecting and infecting humans who are concentrated on the red piece of the panel, but more importantly, they are transmitted and infect the domesticated animals, the food animals, and the working animals, whose population is so much more immense that makes it so that the transmissibility of the pathogen toward the humans is also increased. In contrast, on the lower right panel, if you have the ability to interfere, if you have the knowledge and the science to interfere by being ready with forecasting models, by being ready with early detection, then you are able to mitigate some of the, mitigate the infection toward the domesticated animals so that this is less, therefore their well-being is preserved. The response and the number of humans infected is also less, thereby their well-being is also improved, if not subdued. And overall, it is a much better approach and a much better way to be able to manage the future. But in order to do that, one has to recognize that training in different professions has to be more working together and not separate and not talking to each other, and B, understand the concept that One Health is very central in the way we approach the future. So with these things in mind, our academies in the United States and the Pakistan Academy conceived and are leading a program since 2015 that is focusing on research fellowships that are given on a competitive basis to Pakistani early and mid-career scientists. And the goals of this program are multiple. So first, because the fellows spend part of their research abroad, they're able to foster collaborations internationally in the countries that they go to with the, the committee that oversees the program, which is composed not only of Pakistani and American scientists, but also from scientists from other countries like New Zealand and the UK, for instance. They are trained in methodologies and in techniques that apply to diseases that are relevant in their realities, what is important in the Pakistan condition, not what is important and relevant to the United States, but what is there in their home country and what is useful and meaningful to them. With all of this, they are able to build a nascent right now One Health network, because some of the fellows are physicians, others are veterinarians, others are scientists, PhDs. They learn to collaborate together for the first time. And all of this happens within a broader context for One Health, not just the science, but also ethical issues, legal issues, regulatory issues. The fellowship structure is rather intense. There is a call for applications that people have to submit an actual proposal. That is the first step for selection. Then there is an interview process that happens online. And then there's for the finalists, a meeting for about a week that they spend together with the committee and the host scientists in whose laboratories they will go. And so after all those three things have happened, that is when the fellows are selected. And as I alluded to, they're able to spend about 5 out of the 12 months of the fellowship abroad, and they are able there to build networks in addition to honing their research skills. A way for us to see concrete outcomes of this fellowship, because it's not reasonable to expect that in 1 year someone may be able to have an actual paper published. They do go to an international conference where they are expected to present data that they have accrued over these 12 months. And this is where they go Some go to Kenya, to the Kenya Medical Research Institute. Others go to Thailand, to Chulalongkorn University, and yet others go to Singapore, to Duke and US. So Duke and the National University of Singapore have a partnership. I won't spend time reading the projects for you. Suffice it to say that they are mostly infectious diseases ones, and if you wonder that they are not very many, you would be right. This was our first pilot round, and we only had 5 fellows, but each of those fellows is supported for a year, and the support is for everything that the fellowship involves, both abroad and in Pakistan. We are moving to the second round, where we will have double the number of fellows for the second round. These are, pictures are 1,000 words. These are our fellows in the different places that have been and with the different scientists that they worked with. After their taking part in our program, they sort of become fellows for life, if you will, and therefore they can be, and they choose to be part of a number of networks, international networks that foster the One Health approach. And most of the ones that I have shown here are concentrated in South Asia, because that is geographically the area closest to Pakistan, but there are others that exist in other parts of the world as well. There is already a capacity building has begun in Pakistan. Our fellows have tried to put together an international conference a few months ago. The conference did not go through, not because of their own fault, but there were the circumstances such that the international speakers could not travel to Pakistan to take part. There is already, before our fellowship began, an organization called the Pakistan One Health Alliance that is mostly focused on policy matters, which are very important, because one of the things that scientists tend to forget, and that's why the panel on science diplomacy was important, is that research is fine, but at some point you have to link it to actual efforts that a government has to apply and implement. And so organizations that focus on making the research policy are very, very key in what scientists are able to do. And this is our second round. The applications have closed for it, and we are in the process of evaluating the proposals. And I'd like to leave you with this slide that shows other efforts, not just ours, that connect the world through the One Health lens. The World Bank is a very big funder of many projects like this. The Massey University in New Zealand had created programs in South Asia. This program included 7 countries. This one included 4, Nepal, Bhutan, and others, funded by the World Bank and the European Commission. They had training, education programs, and other efforts. This is a USAID program that is still going on today, and it is about training on what they call One Health workforce, primarily focused at veterinary schools and students that are still studying the veterinary curriculum. And I think this is my last slide. I hope that you may have questions about how to perhaps implement or understand these kinds of concepts for Egypt, and I would be happy to entertain those when the time allows us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now, Dr. Shibiny, Ayman, he will talk us about back in the nature with antibiotic resistance. Dr. Shibiny is currently a professor of biomedical science at the University of Science and Technology, Zewail City, Prior to joining Zewail City, El-Shibiny worked as postdoctoral fellow at a number of universities, including Nottingham University in United Kingdom, Cardiff University in the United Kingdom.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I would like to start by thanking the organizers for inviting me for this well-known and very important conference. Today, inshallah, I'm going to talk about back to the nature with antibiotic resistance. First, I would like to start with the definition of health. What is the meaning of health? So according to the WHO, health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. So you need to be healthy and free of any infection, to be like Salah, the seller of happiness, and not like this guy who is feeling sick because he has an infection, and because he has an infection, he has to go to the doctor, and the doctor has to give him some antibiotics. So why you take antibiotics? To feel better, to kill the pathogens which infect us and cause different diseases. So those antibiotics usually are being taken to control pathogenic bacteria. And as you see in this figure, this figure reflects the most common 5 pathogens worldwide. And it's still not good. If you look at this picture, there are quite stability of the number of pathogenic bacteria, but stability is not good because it still kills the same number of people every year. However, there are some other competitive bacteria like Vibrio. It increases over the time, and there is no way to limit the number of those pathogens. So we need to take antibiotics over and over and over to get rid of those pathogens. So what are those antibiotics? They are being taken outpatient, inpatient, and in agriculture. So we use many antibiotics every day to control different infectious diseases, even in poultry and large animals. So we do misuse those antibiotics, and accordingly, we increase the chance of antibiotic-resistant bacteria worldwide. So this is a very bad scenario, and the WHO started to study this issue, and the first report has been issued in 2014. And the summary of this report is that there is no single bacterium worldwide is sensitive to all available antibiotics, which means we are facing a very bad situation like the pre-era of antibiotic discovery. And the problem is that with those antibiotic-resistant bacteria, we increase the chance between the chance of those antibiotic-resistant bacteria to beat us, because we do have our self-immune system which try to help us to control those pathogens, but by the time the bacteria itself develop its virulence factor and become more and more difficult to treat. So the issue is not only in certain countries, it is a worldwide problem. And the European Union, for example, just declared last year that at least 25,000 people die every year in Europe itself. However, the WHO estimated that the number of people who died every year due to antibiotic-resistant bacteria infection is around 2.2 million, and unfortunately about 1.9 of those people are elder people and young people, like especially children. And unfortunately, all those bacteria are only, they infected us because of contaminated food. This is the one source that contribute to this high percentage of people who die. But we need to raise a question. Do all bacteria pathogens? No. Actually, we do have about 10 to the power 13 human cell in our body, and for each cell we have 10 bacterial cells, and all of them are beneficial, and we call them microbiota. So bacteria help us a lot, and they are considered part of our innate immune system. Without those bacteria, we cannot digest our food, and even we will be very susceptible to be infected with those pathogenic bacteria. So why you take antibiotics? To control those pathogens. But what about those beneficial bacteria, the microbiota? Once you take an antibiotic, simply it starts with the beneficial bacteria. It kills the beneficial bacteria in your stomach and intestine, and then as you see, the blue one are the beneficial bacteria, and the red one are the pathogen bacteria. Once you kill the beneficial bacteria, the red colonies, which are pathogenic, take over and colonize all your intestine system, and accordingly, you can see the inflammation, which is a very bad scenario. So imagine you reduce your immune system in case if you take an non-effective antibiotics which kills a beneficial one, which you consider part of your innate immune system, and leaves the pathogen one to grow and multiply inside your body. So according to the WHO and the misuse of antibiotics worldwide, we started to see the multi-drug resistant bacteria, which is superbugs. What are superbugs? They are bad bugs which resist all drugs. It is not an easy scenario. Why? Because we started to see very bad bugs with multi-drug resistant bacteria that kill people everywhere. And we don't know how many people die due to those antibiotic bacteria because we don't know, we don't have surveillance data, at least in our developing countries in Africa. So many people die every year due to bacterial infection, and unfortunately the scenario becomes more bad and worse if the bacteria infect our blood. In this case, it takes only a few hours. So what about the bad scenario? In the future, the WHO unfortunately predicted that the number of people who may die due to antibiotic-resistant bacteria by 2050 will be around 10 million people. And to have a big share, this is good. So in Africa, we'll have around over 4 million people will die. Do you know why? Because we use antibiotics without prescription. We misuse the antibiotics in our countries. And this is very, very bad. And why it is very bad? Because the bacteria has no limit. So if we misuse the antibiotics here or in any other country, the bacteria has low limit to spread. You can take it from Egypt to another country and vice versa. So we can distribute bacteria, multi-drug resistant bacteria everywhere. And they are very tiny, very small. They are very clever. They can develop resistance over the time in a very short time and infect millions of people. And without drug, this will be again a bad scenario. Accordingly, the WHO organization started to focus more and put priorities for the pathogens. And they put priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, and ask people, especially the pharmaceutical companies, to develop drug to try to control this pathogen. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. Do you know why? Because our antimicrobial drug pipeline is blocked. Why it is blocked? Because it is not easy to develop a new antibiotics over the time to control pathogen. And the last mode of action of antibiotics and new classes of antibiotics have been discovered in 1987, long time ago. Now, we have a winner and a loser. So if the bacteria develops a resistant mechanism over time and time, so they're gonna be the winners. They're gonna kill us. So we need to stop those bad bugs by any way. And that's why WHO is keen about any solution to control those pathogens. One of those solutions is bacteriophages. Bacteriophages is simply a virus. Can we treat bacteria and control bacterial infection with a virus? The answer is yes. Why? Because it is a natural enemy. So it is a virus which only can infect bacteria, not any other cells. And this is a simple life cycle of bacteriophage. So once it finds its host, it will inject its DNA, replicate, and kill its enemy. What after that? it will never do anything unless it finds another host. And what is its host? It is, again, the same bacteria. It has some advantages. It is specific target recognition, so it only infects its host. It recognizes a specific host, not any other bacteria. Self-replicating, so once it finds its host, it will replicate. But it will never infect other hosts because it will never find its receptor in this host. It multiply and penetrate deeper. They can isolate it from blood without harming the human body. And also, they are considered a living entity in case if it finds its host. If there is no host, it will not replicate. And we learned that about viruses, that it will never replicate without its host. Virtually, there is no side effects has been discovered until today, and they can be used in different applications in food industry, in veterinary, and even in human therapy and disinfection. So, what about the regulation and legislation to use bacteriophage? Actually, bacteriophage has been approved and recognized by FDA in 2006 to be used as a food additives. Food additives, like any additives that can be added to your food and eat it safely without any problem. Not only this, there are many products are in market nowadays, and they started, and the big companies are located in USA itself, and it has been recognized as generally recognized safe. USDA approved it to be used against different pathogens like Salmonella, Listeria. Not only that, the NIH, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases in USA, approved the use of phage as an alternative to antibiotics. So you can use phage as an alternative to antibiotics, and also the EPA approved to use it for detection. In addition to that, it is considered as a food additive by kosher and halal food. So it is a good option. And simply this paper, which has been published in 2017, they managed to isolate phages from different parts in the body, in the blood, in the lung, everywhere, without any side effect on human being. So again, different countries apply those phages to control infectious diseases. And those countries include Poland and the Tbilisi Institute in Georgia. They can be, they use the phage to treat wound infection, diabetic food, and also for any other infections. This is a very, very interesting case because this reflects the use of phage, the first human trials in the States, and this was done last year. So this guy was near death. He's a professor, Tom Patterson, and his wife. They visit Egypt. The nice part of this story, they visit Egypt in 2016 during Thanksgiving, and unfortunately, he got infected with Acinetobacter while he stayed here. And when he went back to his country, they realized that he has infected with multi-drug resistant Acinetobacter. They tried with many different antibiotics, and he went in coma, and he was about to die. And his wife, she is a professor in the public health sector in the States. They decided, because there is nothing to lose, they decided to try the phage therapy to control this infection. And likely, after they treated him with phage therapy, he recovered. And there is a very nice talk, in TEDx talk online on YouTube, if you are interested to watch it. And this was the first human trial as a personalized medicine in USA last year. So, I don't like to waste your time and save the time for the other speaker, but we did a lot of experiment with different pathogenic bacteria, and this is one of our favorite papers that we managed to reduce the Campylobacter, which is a very bad pathogen for human being in poultry. We reduced it by 5-log reduction we worked with E. coli 0157H7, which is a very, very dangerous pathogen, and we managed to control it with a phage cocktail to undetectable limit at some time, and this is another some more data. So where are we in Zewail city? Likely, alhamdulillah, yani we secured some fund. I secured 4 different grants to work with bacteriophage to control, to detect, to control infection as a biocontrol in food, in animals, and also for human therapy. And we got some very, very good results. Some of them are already published, and some of them are under publication right now. And we do a great job with different pathogens, including clinical isolates like Klebsiella pneumonia and other pathogens that we still work on them. And we hope, for us, what is next? We always ask this question in Zewail city because we always try to find some solution for our health problems in Egypt. So we work right now. It is not a hope. We're actually in the process to produce some products, drugs. So we target different sections, including food, human infection, detection, and we are doing great in this part. So I think I'm gonna finish with this, and thank you very much.
Thank you. And now, the last but not the least, Professor León Carrión José, Department Chair, Human Neuropsychology Laboratory, Department of Experimental Psychology, University of Seville, Spain. And he will talk about safe driving and brain functions in middle-aged and older drivers.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me again this year, and I'm very happy to stay here every time I come. I think this is a good country and excellent people, so I'm very happy to stay here again. Today, I'm going to talk about something that I'm concerned about. This is safe driving, but also safe driving and brain. And what is the role of the brain function in people who drive? Everybody in our countries, in Europe, South, everywhere drive. So this is our Center for Brain Injury Rehabilitation, entering. And road safety is a major social concern due to its emotional and economic impact on society. Implicit in this concern is the need to accurately assess cognitive functions associated with driving safety. Road safety reveals that cognitive deterioration is a key factor in unsafe driving. Different studies have shown an increased risk of impaired driving in different types of drivers. We have people who are demented, people who have dementia, people who have dementia, and they are driving. So, and this is a problem. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in children, this is very common. They do not drive, but adolescents and young people drive with attentional deficit disorders. Depression is another problem that compromise driving. There are too many people with depression. Every time it's increasing. Most of the people have this problem. And also we have a lot of people with neuropsychiatric disorders. So all of this have increase the risk of impaired driving. Another problem we have is alcohol. Alcohol impairs divided attention and visual scanning, especially in peripheral vision. And attention and visual scanning is crucial for driving. The integrity of driver's cognitive function is a key component in driving ability. What is what we need? We need to evaluate, and also what we do in Spain, in our center and different centers, is we have to evaluate the capacity of driving. Include the skills we evaluate is attention, working memory, inhibitory control, processing speed, cognitive flexibility, and planning. Executive functions allow one to adapt to unforeseen events, a highly useful driving skill. Of course, we have to how to respond easily for when we are into unforeseen events. Developmental differences in executive functions contribute to driving accidents in young adults and could increase the accident rate behind the wheel. These results indicate that executive functionings and cognition may be a key component of driving ability. This is what I'm going to say now, the first study to assess cognition and executive functioning in healthy middle-aged drivers. So we have a point system driver's license in Europe. So the point system driver's license in Europe may provide a valid and reliable framework for assessing cognitive functions and predicting driving skills. By the year 2007, 20 of the 27 members of the European Community has adopted the penalty point system. The penalty point system, the PPS, was introduced in Spain in July 1st, 2006, by the Spanish Department of Transportation. The PPS, the penalty point system, are withdrawn with 12 points license, 8 points for the novice drivers. For infractions like, what is the penalty system if for infraction like speeding, driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol, using the mobile phone when you are driving, or when you are in the car, that kind of thing, you have a penalty system. You have 12 points, and then if you have a penalty, you reduce your points, and when you lost your point, the points, you lost the license. And we have proven in Spain the penalty point system is effective at promoting safer behavior behind the wheel. People don't want to lose the license. So we know that this is effective because we see how it has been reduced the penalties, etc. At promoting safer behavior behind the wheel. Since its inception in 2007, significant drop in traffic-related injuries and fatalities. The purpose of our study was to assess the relationship between executive and cognitive functions and safe driving. Driver, we divided into 3 groups based on the number of points left in their license. So we have drivers that they have all their points intact and clean driving record. We call these people safe drivers. Drivers who had lost some points, and drivers we have lost all the points. So drivers with no points left in their license. We call this unsafe drivers or unsafe driving. So we study 270 drivers aged between 1871 and in 3 groups: control group, partial point loss group, and total point loss group. We excluded drivers with neurological and neuropsychiatric disorders. We want to study normal people, people who have no neurological problems. Nobody knows that people have neural problems. If there is a physician or the family or someone knows that have problem, has not to participate in the study. Novice driver driving for less than 2 years they was also excluded of the study. The 3 groups were formed based on the DGT criteria, the government criteria for the point system driver's license. Points are removed when drivers commit a traffic violation or driving infraction. A driver could lose 2, 3, 4, or 6 points depending on the offense, as different offenses carry different point penalties. Here, very minor, for example, people lost 2 points because people go speeding 20 kilometers over limit, driving without the appropriate lights on the road, drivers without wearing a seat belt, driving a motorcycle without a passenger, with a passenger under 12 years of age. A minor infraction is 3 points. You lost 3 points. Speeding 30 kilometers over the limit, improper distance from another vehicle, driving without headlights, and in cases of low and very low visibility of the road, driving while wearing headphones or using other cellular devices, stopping or parking in dangerous areas or seriously impeding the flow of traffic, 4 points, etc., etc. Or 4 points, driving under the influence of alcohol, or driving without license plate, driving under the influence of drugs, 6, or alcohol, etc., etc. Speeding 50% over the limit, 6 points. So we also used a neuropsychological test batteries and standardized questionnaires to know how was the brain of the patient, the neuropsychological functioning of the patients. Of the people, sorry. Some were patients, some of them not. The Seville neuropsychological test battery is a computerized version of the well-known neuropsychological test, included 4 cognitive assessment tests, simple attention tests. We had to measure attention, how is the attention of the drivers, conditioned attention tests, the Tower of Hanoi test, Stroop test, etc., etc. These tests generate clinical indexes which assess the functional integrity of executive functions. Overall, drivers in results in our drivers with the 4 points on their license showed the better score than the other two groups. In our attention test, performance was similar among the three groups, but drivers with partial or total point loss showed significantly lower reaction times than control. These results contradict the popular belief that the faster reaction time means safer driving and could suggest, and that is our suggestion, that certain psychological characteristics as impulsiveness predispose individuals to unsafe driving behavior. Si you are very impulsive, that is not good for driving. And there has to be the government and the police has to know that you are impulsive and you have not able to drive. It's not good for the people and for you. Low reaction times, in this case, low reaction times could be used as a neuropsychological marker for potentially unsafe driving. Low reaction times. People who low reaction times have a potential, have a neuropsychological marker that say these people is a potential unsafe drivers. Recent research has shown that one's level experience behind the wheel is an indicator of driving efficacy, other authors said. This suggests, our investigation and the other people suggest that drivers with more experience will resolve tasks more slowly but more efficiently, so than those with less driving experience. These older, experienced drivers may be slower at making a decision, but they improve the problem solving. They support the finding that older people, more experienced drivers, detected potential dangers, hazard perception, sooner than young drivers. Old people, you have not to retire the license. People, normally they drive, they drive with care. They take care how they drive. There are limitations in our study, of course. The main limitation of our study is that the prevalence of women in our sample. We have that 10% of women in our sample, because I don't know why, but it was the people. We went to the centers for driving, and that was what we had. So, but however, the study would need to be replicated with a sample more representative for female drivers, and that we are doing this now. So, conclusions. Overall, drivers with partial or total point loss performed worse than control in neuropsychological tests assessing executive function. Drivers with total or partial point loss on their license had significantly lower reaction times on attention tasks. than the control group. Thus, low reaction time could be a neuropsychological marker for unsafe driving. Thank you. Okay, so I'm finishing. And future research could focus on the relationship between faster reactions and personal characteristics such as impulsiveness. Our results also suggest that an association exists between age and integrity of executive function. Reaction times increases with age in all tasks. However, our data show that older middle-aged drivers had better task performance in planning and inhibitory control function. They suggest that higher reaction times are not necessarily an indicator of unsafe driving. Future research should be carried out and to confirm these results and determine the benefits of instructing drivers, or training, drivers in attention and executive control execution. We have no more time. The study design, which divided drivers into groups based on the number of points in the license, could be applied to driving simulation also with electroencephalography. That's something we are doing, driving and doing electroencephalography to see how the brain is functioning in the drivers. The detection at a risk driver prior to obtaining their license could have strong social and economic repercussions and improve road safety. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And take care when you are driving. Be safe.
And now you can take questions, not more than 4 questions for every researcher, please.
I am Matthew Maher. I have a question to Dr. Ayman. In the pre-antibiotic era, the bacteria hadn't have the high rate of resistance. We manipulated the system, the ecosystem. We manipulated the balance of the ecosystem by using antibiotics. What if the bacteria find a new way to resist bacteriophage? If we use the bacteriophage in a huge scale.
Hopefully I got your question right. You ask about how bacteria can develop resistance to bacteriophage. Am I right? Okay, so the bacteria, yes, it can develop resistance to bacteriophages by modifying, by different techniques actually. One of them is to modify the receptor itself. So to get rid of this problem or to overcome it, we usually use phage cocktail. So those products I just presented, some of them have up to 100 different phages. So the bacteria will not be able to develop resistance to all of them at once. So in case if the bacteria can develop resistance to one phage, the other phages will take over and kill those bacteria. يعني الكثرة تغلب الشجاعة. Simply, and this is the main rule by using phage cocktails.
To take the chance for another speaker. We have to take the chance.
Okay.
Yes, please here.
Nirmeen Wali, Helwan University, MD, PhD. Thank you, Dr. Ayman. First, I have 2 questions, Dr. Ayman, Dr. León. Dr. Ayman, thank you for the lovely talk, enlightening talk from the medical point of view, of course. Bacterial resistance is very, very risky topic and hot topic at the moment. I do have a question for you regarding your expertise in the field. What are the restrictions from your point of view for applying such innovative and potentially very effective way using the bacteriophage?
Okay, so this is a very good question. Actually, the restriction started to be diluted right now due to the new discoveries. So actually, phage is not a new thing. They discovered it in 1915, and since this time, some countries use it for treatment, like in Poland and in Georgia, until this moment. But the restriction that the FDA asks for a 100% guarantee that the phage will never bind to any human cells. Even there is no evidence until this moment that the bacteria can infect a human cell, but they need a solid evidence. However, nowadays they approve to use it for topical treatment, which is quite good. So if you have a wound infection, I have many trials. I participated in one of them, but I didn't have time to present them. In the States, they use phages right now to control bacterial infection in wound infection and in ear infection. And this is about to be finalized and approved finally as a final approval by FDA very soon. However, other countries, yes, they use it in medical applications as I presented briefly in this presentation.
Is there a financial burden for the country? Is it a very expensive treatment in your point of view?
Expensive? No, it is very, very cheap, by the way, because they are available everywhere, and the viruses, bacteriophages, about 10 to the power 32 to 34, and it is the most abundant organism, and it is very easy to isolate it. I can tell you later on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
We have another chance for the others, please.
Here.
The pharmacist, the graduate of pharmacy, Alexandria. Here.
Dr. Ayman, I have a question for you concerning bacteriophages. You said that they are cheaper than antibiotics. So I think in this case, we will have a much more bigger problem because it might make people misuse it. So we will face the same problem of the misuse of bacteriophages. So we are still having the problem of the misuse of bacteriophages. So we just found an alternative for antibiotics, but we did not solve the problem of misuse. So this is my question.
Okay, thank you again. But so the bacteria to develop resistance to the bacteriophage is not that easy. It is ongoing. It is a competition between virus and bacteria, like the competition between us and the bacteria. So even if the bacteriophage can develop itself to be resistant to bacteriophage, the phage can develop its mechanism for infection as well. Because remember, the bacteriophage is a virus, and it is only specific for bacteria, and it needs to survive as well. So it will develop itself to be able to survive and to replicate on the bacterial host and produce more of itself.
The last question there, please.
Thank you for this is a good topic, but I would like to ask you some questions. Do you think you take risk when you use the virus because the viral genome is highly changeable? Second, you should take carefully about immune system because viral envelope should be worked as antigen for immune system. And bacteria has its immune system like restriction enzymes. So we need more clinical trial for this is a new drug, I think.
Is this question is for me?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I get distracted. Yeah. Yes. You are asking about the restriction enzymes that can be used by bacteria to control the bacteriophage. Yes, it can do. That's why I said there is different mechanisms for bacteria to control the bacteriophage infection, like the CRISPR system, for example. And they can recognize the DNA of the phage, and then when the phage can reinfect the same strain again, the Cas9 will stop this infection. But again, remember, they are more abundant than bacteria. And it is not difficult to find a bacteriophage that can infect bacteria. So, and nowadays we call those phages superphages. For example, in my lab, I isolated phages that can infect 4 different genus. So it has a wide spectrum. It has a wide range of hosts that can infect. It can infect E. coli, Klebsiella, Proteus, and Klebsiella, for example, which is very, very promising. So the developing of resistance, yes, bacteria can use the restriction enzyme to control those phages. But again, we just make a decision not to use those phages to control bacterial infection and find other phages that bacteria will not be able to control their infection. Do you have another question? I think I answered one.
This is.
Sorry for missing your question.
So thank you for the panel. We would like to appreciate them. Thank you. And we'll see you tomorrow, inshallah.